This episode blew me away. I'm chatting with Leigh Ann Lindsey about her healing journey through cancer and childhood trauma using EVOX therapy. She shares how she now helps others rewire their subconscious beliefs, creating safety in the mind, body, and spirit. If you are new here, you are listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. We have Leigh Ann Lindsey on today. Woo woo.
Hello.
Great. Thank you for coming on, Leigh Ann. So my friend Jess, you were on her podcast, and also she's a client of yours, which I can say that, right?
You might want to ask her before, but
That's
usually
true.
people
That's
are fine
true.
with it.
Shout out, Jess. I think you're cool with it. And the type of therapy that you do or the type of healing you do is so interesting, and I'm just excited to get to know more about that. But you are a holistic healer. You specialize in EVOX therapy, which we're going to talk about today. And then you just told me you started your PhD in depth psychology.
Yes. This week has been a whirlwind of emotions because I don't know if you get this when you're like up leveling so big in your life.
Yeah.
And there's like always grief that comes with up levels for me, where it's almost like a goodbye. It's like I'm looking back at the version of me up until this point and being like, okay, girl, you got me here. And now it's time to move forward and do a different piece. So yeah, I'm kind of raw today. This week, Monday was literally the first day of the program, and there was a lot of emotions coming up. But also, I'm so ecstatic. It's literally my dream program.
Yes. Yeah. And do you have to do your own sessions with a depth psychologist like 3 times a week, or?
So not 3 times a week.
Okay.
We do have to do, there are required therapy hours that we have to do as a client or patient with a therapist throughout the program that we have to do.
Yeah. Fun.
I know. I love it. It's kind of like that. The name of my practice is the accrescent, and accrescent means ever growing. And I really do look at this emotional work, this mental health work as what's the next layer of me I can uncover? Where's the next place I can grow into? And so I don't mind it. I'm kind of like, great.
Yeah.
One more person to help me keep growing.
Yes. Yeah. The layers that get peeled off and are like, okay, we're ready for the next step. And I think there's a certain curiosity that you innately have around, I think, mental health and emotions that keep you going. You're like, oh, what is this shiny thing? Like, what is this about? And in regards to like also being like wanting healing for yourself or wanting healing for your clients, it just, I don't know. I think it takes a special person to be in this line of work.
Yeah, to want to understand and then to want to help others understand and uncover, really. I so often describe it as detective work.
Yeah.
It's like we're here, we're doing this detective work to see what's going on inside of us that is keeping us stuck. And there's always going to be, I think, new places we want to go. I want to go personally, professionally. And, I just was talking with a friend the other day, and I was like, some of these people who are such high performers, such big name people, honestly, I think the only difference between us and them is that they had all the same fears and blocks. They just figured out a way to overcome them. They figured out a way to push through them and not let them hold them back.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I think we see these high performers or these really well-known people and think, oh, they don't struggle with what I struggle with. They don't have the fears I have, when really it's like, they probably do, but they found the coach to help them, the therapist to help them, this whatever it might be, to go, I'm not letting this stand in my way.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And did you always know that you were going to be a healer in some point? Like, if you could take us back, what did that look like for you?
If I really think back to what was the earliest thing I wanted to be as a kid, it was a writer, which I still really, I want to write so much. And this is one of the reasons I'm really excited about this depth psychology program, is I think just the credibility it will bring to anything I write about.
Yeah.
But I always have loved helping and supporting people. My undergrad was actually in public health. And so that was
yeah.
kind of the initial, like, okay, I worked as a research assistant, but I found that side of things very sterile.
Yeah,
You know, you're not
emotionless.
actually working one-on-one with people. You're more just like studying the programs, implementing them. And so I did. In that sense, I knew I always wanted to help and help people grow. And the conversations I have now with my clients, honestly, are the conversations I've been having with people my whole life. And through kind of a series of events, which we can get into if you like,
Yeah.
sort of led to this now much, much more in-depth one-on-one work.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we could talk about EVOX therapy. And did you seek it out first and kind of fell in love with it, or how did you find it?
Yes. So very serendipitous, if you will, in
I
the
love it.
sense that it actually all came from an early stage breast cancer diagnosis.
Wow.
When I was 25, we found a lump, went through the whole process, knew that whatever was going on, I wanted to not just look at it from a conventional lens. I wanted to look at it from an integrative lens. And so a friend told me about this place called the Cancer Center for Healing here in Irvine, California. Dr. Leigh Ann Lindsey it's her practice. And so I started going there. We were doing a bunch of testing, but she has all of her cancer patients do EVOX therapy.
No way.
It's almost like a non-negotiable. Like, if you're not going to do emotional work while you're here, you shouldn't be here. It's not worth it.
Wow.
So I was a patient first, and I found it as a patient, and it absolutely changed my life. It was so mind-blowing and impactful. And about a year later, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is the tool I was meant to use. And so, got trained, got certified, launched my own practice, and here we are 3 years later.
Wow. Can you pull the thread a little bit of what the emotional, was there an emotional connection to cancer for you, or?
100%. So I believe personally, and I think there's going to be studies, and this is something I'd love to study in my program that I think will prove this scientifically, but I believe no matter what the cancer is, there's some emotional component. I also think, though, that when it comes to cancer, it's that point of my body can no longer keep this thing at bay. And so every cancer patient I've ever worked with, what I have seen is it's not one root cause. There's multiple things going on. And we know that only 5% of cancer is genetic. The other 95% of cancer is lifestyle-based, diet, nutrition, pathogens, all the things. So in that sense, yes, I think there's an emotional component no matter who they are. It might be lesser or smaller for some. For myself, I believe 100% it was hugely emotional. I was sexually abused by my dad as an infant.
Wow.
And it's interesting because, I do a little bit of body mapping too. And so my pre-cancer is what it was ultimately labeled as, was in my right breast. And the right side of the body connects to father influence or male influence. And so often what we see with breast cancer is we use this phrase like unrest in the nest. Where is the unrest in your home? And so it just couldn't have rung any more true for me. And so the EVOX therapy that I was doing just opened the door to a depth of healing that I hadn't come across yet. I think I'd like to think that I was always very self-aware, self-reflective.
Yeah.
But also some of those traumas, especially early childhood trauma, can be buried so deep, as you probably know and see too, that it's not right there in the forefront of your mind. And we need to create the safety in order for it to be able to surface. And I think that's what EVOX did for me, is those memories were completely repressed. And then when I started doing the EVOX work, memories started surfacing. And it was sort of like, oh, now we're just getting to the beginning of this. Now we've got to do all this deep digging. But to answer your question, I think 100% for me, the emotions were one of the biggest factors.
Yeah. And if that happened when you were an infant, was there a time span that it happened? Because who told you that story? Do you know what I mean? Because as an infant, I can imagine you don't label that,
I think it was, from birth to, at least 3 or 4 years old, because I have memories as a toddler of those experiences. But then also I have some body memories where there's not mental memories, but there's body memories and body sensations that come up in older ages as well. We stopped living with him full time, I think, when I was about 4.
Okay.
So I can say very clearly at least 0 to 3 or 4, if not a couple years after that too.
Yeah. Did you have siblings as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, older brother, younger brother.
Okay. And did they have a similar experience with dad?
My older brother,
do you know?
Yes. And my younger brother was so little that I think we don't know. He doesn't have any memories that we're aware of, but I think it's certainly possible.
Yeah. So when you started this treatment, did that kind of spear like some healing for your brother or for the family, or did it like domino effect in any way?
I think so. I think it's also just starting, even though a lot of this surfaced for me in, I'd say really like 2021, 2022. I didn't really start talking about it with my family until maybe 6 months to a year later. But now my older brother has done a lot of work around that. He's actually been trying ketamine and doing ketamine with a therapist and working through some of these different things that he has found super profoundly impactful. We're actually the 3 of us talking about doing like a group ketamine
together. Yeah.
To just be able to talk through some things together in a safe healing space. So in that sense, yes, I think there's been a ripple effect that's still kind of just getting started. I do hope that it will continue to impact more healing for all of us, for sure.
What's the relationship with your mom look like?
Very close. She's still in the picture.
Yeah.
My dad, it's a loaded question.
I know, right?
I mean, if we want to get into all the nitty gritty of it, my dad just had no capacity to connect or show up in any way. And actually, it might sound very counterintuitive, but I have so much empathy for him. My heart really does hurt for him in a lot of ways. He's just the kind of person who could never hold down a job, always promising and dreaming about all these things he's going to do, but never actually taking action to make anything happen. And so my mom was a nurse. She was working 12-hour shifts every day.
Oh, wow.
And leaving us home with him and thinking that he was going to be a loving, caring father. And so I don't think she had any awareness of what was happening. And I think us being infants, you don't know what's happening and that it's maybe not right, even though you have all these weird feelings about it being so young. So, I don't think she had any inkling. And then with my dad, 2 years ago, yeah. Maybe 3. No, 2 years ago.
I know, right?
I had to confront him and just say, I know this happened.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for an explanation. I'm not looking for an apology. I know this happened, and I need to let you know that because of that, we can no longer have a relationship. And
wow.
I don't know that that's, the right path for everyone. That absolutely felt like the right path for me. So I haven't seen him, heard from him, talked to him in 2 years now.
Do you know where he's living?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is it close to you? Like, are you ever going to run into him?
No. He's in a different city. Far away, thankfully.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Is your mom close? Or
they're in Corona, so they're fairly close, and we see them very, very often. I see my little brother and his now wife and their now newborn very, very often, so we're pretty close. I'd say at least every other week.
Wow.
Getting together to do something.
So like in the last 3 years, all of this kind of like there was the breast cancer diagnosis or early onset, and then it was all this trauma kind of came out. Was it like subconscious? Like you knew that it happened, but this was like, oh, now I have to face this. Like, did it feel like that?
It felt like I feel like I had always had inklings that something had happened. Again, because of body memories that I would experience. And body memories are like those sensations you get when someone touches you a certain way, or You
Yeah.
smell a certain smell and you get this like rush of sensation that doesn't necessarily have visual memory with it, but there's some kind of memory there that the body's responding to. And I remember even 5 years before these memories started surfacing, literally Googling, like, how do you know if you've been sexually abused?
Wow.
Because it was like, the body
there.
does know.
Yeah.
I think at least subconsciously then. And I would read through it and go, every check, every single thing checks off for me. And yet I still don't have those memories. I had kind of very weird snippets of things. And what I say so often is I did about a year of EVOX at the Cancer Center. And then when I launched my practice, I committed to continuing to do EVOX on myself 1 a week for a full year. And in fact, I actually recorded a lot of solo podcast episodes on those EVOX sessions, sharing with people like, here are the patterns I'm stuck in. Here's what I'm working through. Here's what's surfacing for me.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I'd say like 2 years into EVOX, having cleared a lot of other things that I think required less heavy lifting, all of these memories started surfacing. And what I really believe happened there is kind of twofold. One, I expanded my capacity, my mental and emotional capacity by doing that work for the 1 or 2 years. I offloaded a lot of stuff, relationship dynamics, being taken advantage of, poor boundaries. And that expanded my capacity, which then I think allowed my subconscious to feel like, okay,
you're safe enough.
This is safe to bring up now. This is safe to face now.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I think it is when you can recognize the work that you have done, the strength that it gave you, and the capacity to keep going is like, it's otherworldly in some way, and not everyone chooses to do that, as you know, right?
Yeah. And I think, even there, I have so much empathy for those individuals because it's what's happening there. I think in the subconscious, what's happening is it doesn't believe it's going to be safe or okay to face these things, even though they may not be consciously thinking that. Why do we avoid things, right? Why are memories repressed? Why do we avoid looking at things? Because I think at a deep, deep subconscious level, the mind is like, no. If we look at that, it won't be okay. Something bad will happen. We can't survive it. And so oftentimes a lot of the work I'm doing with my clients is let's create the safety to face these things we need to face. And I think it can happen so quickly. But what's tricky about the subconscious is it's subconscious. A lot of us aren't aware of what's going on there. And so I work with a lot of people, particularly at the Cancer Center, who come in and go, no, I'm over that trauma. I've processed it. I've moved on. I've forgiven.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me anymore. And this is where I say, on a conscious level, that may all be true. We have to see if there's anything lingering subconsciously. Because I really do think the conscious mind, the intellectual brain, can move on very quickly.
Yeah.
It can process the data, it can process what happened, and it can go, great, boom, boom, done, let's move forward. The subconscious self, which is also the feeling self, I think needs a little more intention, needs a little more time, and very pointed work to allow it to release some of the imprints of really impactful experiences.
Yeah, like it needs to be brought to the surface. Like it almost sounds like a two-parter thing. Like you got this part, great, but there's also this other part that kind of needs to come forward so we can really see if that's true or not. Because what else? Just, it's like excavating it, like to see what's there.
Yeah. For me, it's particularly the difference between conscious work versus subconscious work. Conscious work is an intellectual understanding, right? Oh, I feel this way because this is what my parents did and that wasn't okay, that wasn't appropriate, that wasn't healthy. Oh, okay, I get it now. I get why I feel this way. And that is so profound. We need that. We do. But there's two other pieces of the puzzle that are so important. One of which is what was repressed. At the time of the originating experience, what did I have to hold in? And so often this is a part of what I think makes trauma is there's so much that happens in the moment that we're not able to express and get out, that it gets locked within us. And so we need to go, what was repressed? What emotions?
Yeah.
What words need to be said? And then even deeper than that, I think the real meat and potatoes of it is what beliefs got created from that experience. And that is really so, so profound, because it's those beliefs that are dictating our day-to-day life. We know the subconscious is responsible for 80 to 95% of the decisions we make in a day. So what are those beliefs there? And this is where I find that the subconscious piece is so important, where this tends to surface, because, again, just talking and understanding, oh, my parents did this. I'll give you a great example. I was talking with my stepdad the other day, and he was saying he has a great friend who, they're in their 70s, and he still has such heartbreak and grief around a feeling of abandonment from his parents when he was a kid. And we were talking about that, and my stepdad was saying, why is, he's 70. This happened when he was 14. Why does this hurt him so deeply still? And I was saying, well, you've identified one piece of the puzzle, which is I was abandoned. I feel I was abandoned, but you need to go deeper. What is his narrative about that? My parents abandoned me, therefore blank. And in his case, it might be something like, they abandoned me, therefore I'm worthless. And that is why it still hurts him, even though he's 70, because that narrative never got changed or shifted or witnessed.
Yeah. I'm thinking about my own experience in that. I mean, I have children, and that has been the biggest mirror. And I think for me, a lot of anger has been repressed. And a lot of, just being a woman in general.
Oh, yeah.
But I think my personality and in my family system, like, it just, you're the good girl. Like, you don't say anything, you don't blah, 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 blah. Like, and even if it wasn't totally said, it's this, unwritten rule that we're all agreeing to on some level, you know? And a lot of that anger has come out, and I talk about it a lot on the podcast, sorry guys, but with my parenting, and it's so shaming and it's so hard. And I'm like, oh, I don't like this. And then I also see my daughter get really angry and scream, and I'm like triggered, like, you can't do that because I couldn't do that, and it's just, it's so hard, but it is so true. I love that idea, because I can go back and be like, yes, 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 yes. But I think that was really key, what you said of like, what was repressed for you. So even if it's coming out now in some way, is that the way that you want it to come out? Number one, for me, it's not. It's like coming out sideways. But how can I really honor that part of me that it was repressed?
Yeah. I often like to ask this question because I'm, like I said, that detective work, I'm always looking at the clues, if you will. And yeah, the predominant emotions that we experience, especially if they seem a little out of proportion to what actually happened, tells us a lot. For me, even in what you just described, it tells me, oh yeah, there's repressed anger that your body's like, I need to get this out. If the original anger that it came from isn't enough of a justification for you to express it, I'm going to look for other reasons to express it.
Ooh, that's good.
And so that's kind of how I see it, where your subconscious is like, oh, the kids didn't do something right. Great. Oh, finally I can offload a little bit of this anger. Yeah. And also another clue that there's something subconscious going on is just, if you intellectually know, I don't want to get angry at my kids like this. Yeah. And yet you can't seem to stop the pattern. That is such a clear sign. Yeah, there's something going on subconsciously.
My God, I love it. Okay. That makes sense. And I see it in my relationship too. Like everything, it's just leaking out sideways, and it feels terrible. And it used to be a little bit more like people would cut me off in traffic and I'm like, wow, or like dumb things that. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and what I would do is, especially, again, like when it's disproportionate to what's happening, sometimes I take a moment to go, okay, what version of me is this anger from? And sometimes it's very clear. I'm very visual. I get a lot of imagery that comes up in my mind. And so sometimes when I ask that question, I'll get like an immediate 6-year-old me that comes up. And it's like, oh, this is the 6-year-old anger that never got expressed. And what I would, that's one way to access it. But another, step of that afterwards is, can I make space for her to say what she never got to? Can I witness that? And so I have conversations with past versions of me, younger versions of me all the time.
Yeah.
To go, oh, yeah, okay. 6-year-old me is really angry about this thing. I'm not going to try and change it. Yeah. I'm not even going to try and understand it. I'm just going to witness it. I'm going to let her say what she needs to say. I'm going to let her feel seen and heard.
Yeah. I love that. That is so beautiful. And it is that, like when you said, I was like, oh, like, yes. And I do think it's like, can you take the time to do that? Like, can you honor yourself in that? Because I think for me, I'm like, oh yeah, like, yes, it's here or whatever. But to really kind of slow down in that, and maybe not in that moment.
Yeah, right.
Because that's real hard.
Yeah, totally.
But it is, I think, because I've been asking, like, okay, what is here for me? What is here for me? But that's such a present moment. That's like, what is the lesson here now? What do I need to know now? Versus, what is this past version of me? Who is she? And what is she needing here? Like,
I'd even say, I'd flip it and say, not what do I need to know now? It's what within me needs to be said. Like, what needs to come out? Yeah. Because even then, there's like a less. It's still a little bit of a like dismissal of the self of like, oh, there's something I need to take in, and actually, it's the opposite. I think there's something I need to let out.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. I feel like you're unlocking a lot of shit for me right now.
I love that.
Because it does feel like, well, here's your lesson. Like, here's a blah, blah, blah. Like, it can kind of shame loop it a little bit.
That probably is what you experienced as a kid.
Yeah.
And now we're, so many of us are now unconsciously treating ourselves the same way our parents treated us in some things.
Oof.
Like when that anger comes up, are you treating yourself the way your parents did?
Yeah.
Of like, oh, you shouldn't feel this.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to figure out what the lesson is and then just move on.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I think that the way if I'm going to pull that thread, I think it's like this invisibleness, the invisibility of like, you don't exist in this emotion. You don't exist at all in some way. Like, you are unseen. And so then I quickly say, well, this is your fault, or you have to deal with it on your own, or it still becomes shaming and like looping in that way versus, oh, I can understand it, but then there's always, just a layer of shame that just keeps coming with it. And then it gets stuck. It's not getting better.
Yeah. That's where I think we do have to go back to some of these early childhood experiences. And because here's the thing, adult you doesn't need to know that. It's younger you that needs to know. Like, that's where it's all coming from. What age of me was taught or modeled, or where did this belief originate?
Yeah.
That's the version of me that needs to hear this message. Because adult you probably knows there's no shame in anger.
Yeah.
It's okay to have anger. And in fact, it's adult you that's telling that to yourself. But it's, I think, a younger you who needs that message, but also before she can receive that message, she needs to be heard first.
And let it out.
Yeah, I say it all the time. The subconscious, the inner self, is not going to be ready to hear what you have to say until it has first felt heard. And that is so often the part we want to, jump across or get through as quickly as possible. Because what is hearing ourself? It's just that raw emotion. It's letting that past self just vent. It's letting that little self say things that she never got to say that she needs to, even if they don't make sense, even if they're not true.
Yeah.
It really is just the feeling and the witnessing of it. And we don't want to do that. We want to jump immediately to the fixing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think, like, as you're talking, I'm finding it hard to recall what she needs. Like, I'm like, what does she look like? How old is she? I'm like, I don't know. Like, not that I can't know, but I'm just observing and noticing that it's like, you gotta dig deep. I need time. I need to be intentional. I need to be focused to really name her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sometimes when we start this path, that younger self or that inner voice feels really elusive. It's almost like, okay, I'm closing my eyes, I'm tuning in, nothing's coming up. But again, I talk about our inner self and our outer self like they're people, like they're separate people. And it's sort of like, well, yeah, if you haven't talked to a person in 20
How do you know
years,
her? Yeah.
they're not going to just spill their guts to you.
Yes.
We've got to reestablish that relationship a little bit. And so sometimes that looks like, maybe for a week, for just 5 minutes, you kind of sit down and you imagine that little self and what she looks like and what she was interested in. And you imagine talking to her, and, maybe the first day or two, she's not saying too much, but by the end of the week, she's just like chatting at you.
Yeah.
Telling you so much.
No, that's so sweet. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I'm like, let me just access that real quick. And I'm like, I think I need to sit down with this one. Yeah. So in EVOX therapy, can you talk a little bit about like what it is and like the steps and what it would look like to work with you in that?
So I always like to talk about EVOX as a technology and then how I'm pairing that with the work that I'm doing. So EVOX as a technology, there's two pieces to it. The first is something called voice mapping. What we're doing with voice mapping, this technology, is we know that whenever we're speaking, there are measurable tones in the voice that correlate to emotions. So what we're doing is, as me and the client are having a conversation back and forth, we're measuring those tones in their voice to get a graph of what emotions are imbalanced. And we can see them ranked in severity. Like, this emotion is extreme, this emotion is high, this emotion is medium, this emotion is low.
So this is like you're hooked up to a machine. You have a microphone?
Yep. They have a headset on that has a little mic that comes.
Okay.
And so they'll have that headset on the whole time. And as they're talking, we're measuring those tones. And I can literally see a graph on the screen of unworthiness is extremely imbalanced. Or emotional disconnect is extremely imbalanced, or anger, sadness, self-critical, some of these different emotions. Once we've identified those imbalanced emotions, we are outputting through the hand cradle. So this is the biofeedback component of EVOX. We're outputting frequencies that have been found to help support the balancing and the release of those emotions. And so what a session looks like is they're coming in, especially a first-time session, we're going to spend 30 minutes or so just chatting about, okay, what are you experiencing? What are you not wanting to experience? Where are you trying to go? So we decide together, okay, what is going to be the piece of this that we really do some detective work around today to figure out what is going on in your subconscious that's keeping you stuck? And then when we get into the EVOX part of the session, what's happening is we're chatting a little bit, and then as they're receiving the biofeedback, there's just going to be gentle music that plays in their ears. And so that could be anywhere from maybe a minute to 3 minutes that we're outputting those balancing frequencies. They're listening to the music. And what I do, this is now kind of bringing in my flair to this process, is as they go into that biofeedback, I give them a question or a prompt to reflect on, to, see what comes up from the unconscious during that round. So what'll happen is they'll, we'll be about to go into the biofeedback. I'll say, hey, let's reflect on this question. What do I think yelling at my kids is going to achieve?
That's
or
a good one.
What am I afraid won't happen? If I don't yell at my kids, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so then I say, okay, let's reflect on that for 2 or 3 minutes with this music. And so they'll reflect on that. Then when the biofeedback's done, the music will stop. They'll share the thoughts that came up for them. And usually it gives me little clues and tidbits of where to go next. And then I give them the next question and we go right into the next round. And so it's fun in that it's very different from a traditional talk therapy session where it's like we're just staring at each other talking back and forth the whole time. these moments of reflection that they get while they're receiving the biofeedback, I think I see just being so profound. And I think in part that's because of EVOX, but also just having that time to see what surfaces. I really do think EVOX, there's kind of two main things it's helping achieve. One is it's very soothing and regulating to the nervous system, which I think is really profound. And how does that impact allowing more subconscious things to surface? When the nervous system is regulated, I think so much more surfaces, because the mind, body, and spirit is like, oh, we're safe. Okay, we can let some of this come up.
Yeah.
And then I also really think EVOX is helping break old neural pathways and just allowing shifts to happen so much quicker. And this is why when I discovered EVOX, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is the tool for me, because I do think I'm particularly good at being able to spot the beliefs. As someone's telling me, recounting what happened, recounting what they're experiencing, I can almost hear the subconscious beliefs that are contributing to all of that.
Yeah.
And I could just go, okay, well, here's the beliefs. You need to change it. Let's move on. But remember, the subconscious isn't always ready to move on that quickly. And I really do think EVOX helps make the mind, body, and spirit so much more malleable, meaning those things that it's been looping on, that it hasn't wanted to let go of, it's able to let go of so much quicker. And so I think, again, like it pairs so well with my work because I can spot what's keeping us stuck. I can spot the beliefs and I know here's what we need to do to shift it. And then I think pairing that with this therapy of EVOX allows that to happen and shift so much quicker.
Okay, so first they have the headset and they're talking and telling the story. And then you're picking up on the belief and you're like you're making a mental note.
I'm making a mental note,
Yeah, you're like...
The system, EVOX doesn't tell me that.
Right.
EVOX
That's
just
where
tells
your
me
mastery
emotions.
comes in. Yes.
I think, again, like that is really where my process
Intuitive.
comes in of the simplest way to run an EVOX session, according to Zyto, the company that makes this, is I would just have you say a statement. Like, I really want to stop. I don't want to get mad at my kids so much. And then I'd send you into a round of biofeedback and say, great, okay, listen to the music for 2 minutes and think about that. And then when you come out, I'll have you repeat the statement and we'll just do that for 30 minutes. And people see incredible results just doing that. And I think that's what speaks to the power of EVOX. And those balancing frequencies really are allowing things to shift and change. I think my process, just helps us get to the core of it so much quicker.
Yeah. Are people emotional during sessions or does it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's all.
On the reflection, it'd just be like crying the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Because a big part of this too is, like I said,
release.
Emotional release. What was repressed, and we're trying to make room for what was repressed to be expressed. With that said, I'm not trying to make people cry.
Yeah.
I'm not like wanting or waiting for people to cry. And oftentimes people don't cry. And then also oftentimes many, many people do. But I will say it's really fun how many people come in saying, I don't cry.
Yeah.
Like, I am not a crier. I don't know why I'm crying right now. And I'd like to think one, that speaks to EVOX and how it just allows things to move through, allows things to be released that maybe felt so stuck and rigid. And then, selfishly, I'd like to think that I create a really safe space where, both consciously and unconsciously, their spirit feels safe to go to those places.
How do the biofeedback, how does that, is it the tone of the music that sends like a different vibrate? Like, well, how does that work?
So it's not actually the music itself. Is not the treatment, if you will. Although, legally in this world of holistic medicine and alternative medicine, I can't use that word treatment. The music, so the biofeedback frequencies are being output through what we call a hand cradle. It's this little blue electronic device that their hand is resting on.
Okay.
And those frequencies are being output into the body. The music is just really so that they're not sitting in silence.
Okay.
As we're outputting those frequencies, it could just be kind of silence and we're like staring at the walls, or
I see.
There's this nice gentle music that plays. But how do those frequencies actually facilitate change is maybe the question we're asking here. I bring it back to what I said earlier, where it's they're one that's soothing to the nervous system.
Okay.
It's almost like I sometimes liken it to EMDR, where
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
yes, like we're doing that bilateral stimulation that really, what is that doing? It's just helping disconnect those dysregulation signals in the amygdala of the brain. It's helping disconnect the intensity of the emotional response to these memories. And I see EVOX doing the exact same thing, where sometimes we're doing reprocessing like we might in an EMDR session. It really depends. If there's like a very, very specific event, I'll do some specific reprocessing, desensitizing practices in the rounds just to help the brain kind of get desensitized to that experience. And so I think that is in part what's happening here. And when we soothe that nervous system response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, so much more is able to surface. Sometimes the analogy I like to give is when we're so dysregulated, it's almost like if our mind was like a tide pool, and we're trying to look into the tide pool and be like, what is going on in here? But these waves just keep crashing and crashing and crashing. So you can't get a clear picture. EVOX is like, we're stopping the waves. And so now we can look in the tide pool and be like, oh, I see this. Okay, yeah, I see that now. It just allows so much more to surface. And then that second piece is there's something about those frequencies that it almost like dislodges these things that have been so deeply ingrained in the brain. It loosens them up. It allows them to move through so much quicker. And again, that's what EVOX is doing kind of no matter how people are running a session. But I do think being able to also go, let's identify the beliefs is what helps me get shifts, helps clients experience shifts so much faster. And also, leading to actual change in their life, because those beliefs have been changed at that core subconscious level.
Right, exactly. And how long is a session typically?
First time sessions are 90 minutes, and then returning sessions are just 60 minutes.
Okay.
And so we'll usually in returning sessions, we'll spend about 15 minutes just catching up and going, hey, okay, where are we at? What are we experiencing? What's shifting? What's not shifting? That helps me understand and decide, where do we need to start? Where do we need to go today as the next piece of this puzzle? And then we'll be in the session for about 45 minutes or so.
Yeah. And what have you seen in your work that has been really profound for you? Like, what have you seen people heal from? You can even, you talked about your own experience a little bit.
Yeah. There's so many. Oh my goodness. There's like 4 that immediately jumped into my mind. I work with a lot of cancer patients. And I think it's funny because when I first started EVOX, I was like, no, I can't do that. That's too heavy. That's too much. And a year ago, actually, this is very full circle, I started just one day a week. I am at the Cancer Center for Healing now as a practitioner.
Wow.
Dr. Keneally invited me in to come practice there. And I just am like, oh, this is so where I'm meant to be. And so there's really just such profound stories there of clients coming in. I have a couple patients right now with, we see all the cancers, but colon cancer specifically is one that's coming up. And with colon cancer, the question I always ask is, what is it that you can't digest emotionally? What can't you let go of?
Yeah.
What can you just not get past? And as soon as I ask that question, it's like their eyes widen. And every single time there's something that they're like, I just cannot let go of this. I cannot get over this. I cannot forgive this person. And in my work with them, it's not, just let go of it. You just need to let go of it because it's killing you. No, it's obviously they would love to let go of it. If they haven't been able to, we need to understand why the subconscious can't or won't let go of it just yet. But to see, talking about that unloading, to see these individuals who are experiencing such a severe diagnosis unload this trauma that they've sometimes been carrying for 40, 50, 60 years. And you see the lightness. And so often they say that. They're like, I feel so much lighter. I feel so much calmer. And then to see their actual physical health progress too is just so profound. I had a young, like a 31-year-old gentleman who had colon cancer. And
Wow.
within 2 months, it had shrunk by 40%. And of course, they're doing so many other things too. They're doing a lot of holistic stuff. He was also blending that with some conventional work. So it's not to say EVOX by itself, but the things that came up that we were able to clear and release for him, I believe 100% were so profound. So that's the cancer side of things, which is so tangible in the sense that I can literally see their physical health improving. And that is just such a gift and an honor to be able to be a part of. But I also, right now, I have I'm thinking of 2 clients who their moms just passed from cancer.
Oh, wow.
And working on them through the grief and just understanding, first just helping process, helping sit with it. And you being able to hear them say things like, I would not have made it through this time without this. And also helping them process, there's anger towards the medical system.
Yeah.
And resentment and some of these different pieces. Grief is so multifaceted, helping them work through some of those different facets of that. And then there's everything else under the sun. Maybe it's someone who, I'm thinking of a young actress I work with who she was like, I'm stuck in self-sabotage. As soon as I get a good gig, I freeze up, I freak out, and I sabotage myself. And so being able to help her work through that and understanding that a lot of the roots of that were rooted in childhood and this fear of there's no one there for me and I'm not good enough and is it really safe to be seen? And then to be able to see her like go and get a great role in a movie is, it's very, very exciting. And so that's the piece that's the best, that feels the best, outside of them just being able to say things like, I feel so much lighter, I have so much more peace, is that ripple effect on their life. And for me, it's all about, we're doing this work so that we can have more peace, calm, clarity, and alignment.
Right.
And those things aren't finite.
Yeah.
There's always more peace available to us. There's always more alignment available to us. But if those things feel elusive, it's not that your brain hates you. I always say the subconscious is only ever trying to protect us. It's just, we need to understand what it thinks it's achieving. Self-sabotage is really just self-protection. But it's that subconscious working on old programming, on old truths that maybe don't apply anymore. So those are some of the examples.
Cool. Have you ever seen a subconscious that was like, no, fuck you, we're holding on to this forever?
Oh, yes. I don't get it as often because I really do think most people who come
are ready
and they're like, open. I want to see this.
Yeah.
I'd say I've maybe like less than 5 clients in 3 years where I can almost like energetically feel it in the room, even though consciously they're like, I want to work through this. It's like I can visually see the vault door that is like locking everything in. Yeah. And it is like, no, we will not budge. And so there's sometimes I kind of have 2 approaches when it comes to that. One is we'll address that straight out. And I'll say, this is on lockdown.
Give me the keys. Yeah.
This is on lockdown. And I won't force my way in. This needs to be a decision on your end. Let's see if we can do some work during a session to allow those walls to come down. Oftentimes that achieves the goal. Yeah. If it's really, 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 really stuck, the thing I refer people next to is something called Cereset. And I actually had a Cereset. There's one in Encinitas. I love them so much, who I refer people to. It's like a brain echo technology. Whoa. This is like a body-based work. Okay. And so this is where sometimes when I can go, your literal brain is on lockdown. It is so stuck. We need to address this from a body-based approach, not a cognitive subconscious approach. And that I only get that a handful of times, like I said, but Cereset it like opens up the brain so fast. And so I'll say, go do 5 sessions of Cereset. Yeah. Come back and then let's continue the work.
What is Cereset? Like, is it connected to your brain and then zaps you?
So there are little, little stickies they put on your head. It's actually really great for brain injuries as well. So I've done it myself because I've had so many concussions from soccer.
I'm like, girl, what's up?
Yeah, I know. Right.
Wow.
But it's really great. Like I had a friend who had a near-death experience diving
Oh my
in the
gosh.
ocean, and it just, her whole nervous system got completely hijacked.
Yeah.
I also think it can be really great for mold patients, because when you're in mold, it just completely hijacks your nervous system. And sometimes we need that really deep reset. And I have just seen like Cereset works so quickly. But what they're doing is basically what they figured out is when we have either super intense prolonged chronic stress or a very, very intense acute traumatic stress or trauma event, the brain can kind of get glitchy, if you will. And if that glitch isn't corrected quick enough, the brain kind of moves on. And it just becomes like a permanent way the brain processes. And so what they're doing with Cereset is they're recording the sound of your brain waves, playing it back to you in music form, actually. So in Cereset, music actually is the treatment.
Wow.
But there's something about when the brain hears itself that it's able to re-identify the glitches and start to course correct.
Wow.
And so if someone is like, you feel like your whole body has been hijacked by anxiety, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or you just feel like I am so stuck or on lockdown, or if I see that is what I refer them to every time. I had them on the podcast. I can send you a link to that. It's a really, really fascinating.
We'll put that in the show notes. A link to your podcast in that show. Yeah. Can any ages, can children do it?
I'm pretty sure any ages can do that. There's some things when you talk to them, they're great. Andrew and Jason are the owners over there. They're fantastic. They have some questions. I think there are some contraindications in terms of mental health diagnoses. Like I don't think they can do it with bipolar disorder. But for the most part, it's pretty open. But it is a commitment. It's like usually you do a round of 5, 1 a week for 5 weeks. While you're in that, no drinking, no alcohol, no substances of any kind. So there's
no
a commitment.
brain-altering substances, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
No brain-altering substances, because we're trying to help the brain shift. We don't want anything to interfere.
Right. Wow, that's so wild.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's great. Like I said, only a handful of times have I referred clients to that.
Right.
But when I do, it's like the brain just opens up.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now we can go do this subconscious work.
Yes. But I do think that was kind of an important question of because not everybody subconsciously is open, and there's only so much you can do as a practitioner and for themselves. And so that makes a lot of sense that it's just nice that there's a way to kind of open that up and then, okay, let's do this work.
Yeah. And it's all important. It's all needed.
Yeah.
I also am very much of the mindset that I'm not trying to be the thing for everyone everywhere all the time, and so if I feel like I don't know if this is the right fit, or I would love to continue working with you, but you need to go do this thing first, I will say that so quickly, because I want to be impactful, and at the same time also acknowledging that I don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. I'm over here addressing this subconscious piece of the puzzle, but there might be a physiological piece to the puzzle. And I'm so passionate about trying to change the way we perceive mental health, because I think right now it's still very much like, okay, well, if something's up, only then.
Yeah.
You either do like counseling or breath work or meditation. It's still very, and that's great. I love that. Those are important. But I want us to look at mental health the same way we look at physical health, right? If we are sick physically, there's not just one person we go to.
Right.
And if they can't solve it, we're like, oh, guess that's it. Bummer. No, it's like, okay, maybe you need to see an endocrinologist. Maybe you need to see a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist. We understand that there are so many pieces to that puzzle, but I still think, at least in the mainstream, when it comes to mental health, it's sort of like just these 1 or 2 resources. And there are so many more, but that also comes back to that education. People don't know.
Right.
And so if we can start to explain, hey, there's physiological work you can do that supports your body. Things like Cereset, like somatic experiencing, like nervous system practices. And when they understand what the tools are and when you might need which one, it becomes so much more bio-individual.
Yes. I love it. Okay. Also tell me, I also saw that you do like flower essence and you are somatic. I mean, tell me all the witchy stuff you do. Tell me everything.
Lots of study. Again, the accrescent, the term there just being ever growing. And that is just such a core philosophy for me. I always want to be growing and learning.
Yeah.
So yes, I've done a lot of continuing education in somatic experiencing, neuro-linguistic programming, flower essences. Flower essence. So I used to make them myself and like hand blend flower essences. I don't do that anymore just because it's so time consuming. But flower essences, they're really like homeopathy, except for emotional wellness. And I still refer flower essences to clients often. Essentially, it's they're distilling the essence of that flower into water, and they're little drops that you put under your tongue. But they're very, very specific. So each essence supports a very specific emotional imbalance. For example, one that I take often because I need it is walnut. And walnut is so great for adapting to change. Where it's like we have change, it can be very dysregulating for us.
Yeah.
I'm slow to change because I'm just like, ooh, things are going too fast. Let's just keep the brakes on. Let's not go too fast. And so oftentimes when I'm in a big time of change, I'll take walnut.
Just chug it down.
People are like, can I shower in this? Can I just dump it all over?
I love it. What's your sun sign? Do you know? You're 3?
Is that just like the normal birth sign? Gemini.
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Yeah, June.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, sorry, I'm like getting all the weird witchy stuff.
I don't know so much about those,
don't need to.
I feel like people don't like Geminis. That's what I feel like the vibe is out there, that they're like sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Geminis, I think is just like, I can speak for my daughter. It's like one day she likes this, the next day is different. And you can't keep up. Do you know what I mean? But I'm a Sagittarius and the opposite sign is Gemini for me. So I'm the opposite sign of you. And so there's a lot of like balancing actually in our signs together. But I literally know nothing and then I pretend I know all these things. I know like snippets of it.
Do you know about human design?
Yes. What are you?
Manifesting generator.
Of course you are. Yes, I love it.
Yeah. And that one resonates. I know more about that, although still not very much. But that one resonates so much more. Just how you're meant to use your energy. And there was a lot about learning about Manny-Gens in human design that I felt was very freeing for me. Okay, so it's okay for me to do things this way.
Yes. And this works for me. I don't have to keep doing or trying to crack the code in the way some other person's doing it.
Yeah.
I'm a projector, so I have zero energy of anything. I steal your energy. That's happening.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, Leigh Ann, how can people connect with you? How can they work with you? We'll put it all in the show notes. And then also your podcast too. Tell us everything.
Yes. The Accrescent podcast. I chose the hardest name, so I'm so sorry. Yeah, if you can put it in the show notes.
Don't worry. How We Get Thru is very fucking long. So right there with you.
No one knows how to spell it. Think of a crescent, like a crescent moon.
Yeah.
But the Accrescent podcast. The best thing to do, though, I think, is just follow on Instagram, Leigh Ann Lindsey. And then my business is also at the Accrescent. And if you find those, the link in bio will take you to the website, the podcast, all the other things.
So then do you not work virtually because you have to put the hand on, right?
We actually can, but we do have to get them set up with the technology. So I'd say probably 60% of my clients are remote, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so they get the cradle, they have to download this app. And it's only compatible with Windows systems, but I have a whole page on my website that talks about doing remote EVOX.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yay. Awesome. Okay, we'll put all that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on. And I can't wait to do a session with you. I mean, multiple.
It was so fun. Yes, I would love to have you. I'd love to give you a session. That would be so fun.
That would be so fun. Okay.
I love this. Thank you.
So thank you. Thanks so much for listening to our show. If you are loving what you're hearing, please give us a review up on Apple Podcasts, as that helps our little show grow. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.